Why don't you go ahead and make some introductions, Sherry?
Gary's going to do it.
Oh, well, hey, Gary.
Are we ready to start?
I think we probably ought to.
Homer's not on here with us, is he?
He is not.
Patrick, would you open us up in prayer, please?
Sure. Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather and share what's going on in our worlds and what's going on with the still continued response to this crazy COVID situation. But just it's good to be together to gather, and we look forward to the day that we can gather together in person once again, like at the upcoming conference. We just ask you to bless our time together here this morning, and that it may be fruitful for all that have joined in. And we just ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Patrick. Well, welcome to the May Roundtable for the NACFM. We're glad everyone's here. This is a first, a historic roundtable for us, in that it's sponsored by one of our business partners, the Kindly Company. And we have joining us today, Julie from the Kindly Company. And she's going to share a little bit about what they do. Julie, take it from there.
Thank you so much, Gary. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Walker, and we are the Kindly Co. Let me just pull up. Okay, so I will be, I do apologize, technology. Okay, so here we are. We are the Kindly Co, and we offer sanitizing wipes, dry wipes for making your own wet wipes, and a premium collection of wipe dispensers at extremely competitive prices. As you can see, our stainless steel wipe dispensers are contemporary, beautiful containers that look great in large spaces. Our sanitizing wipes are safe for hands and surfaces. They are bleach, alcohol, and phenol-free using BZK, benzalkonium chloride, a common antiseptic that kills 99.9% of germs, with added aloe, vitamin E to moisturize your hands, of course. Who doesn't have dry hands these days? One case contains 4 rolls for a total of 4,000 wipes that are rugged and lint-free. We actually just redid the fabric, so it's really very nice. And lastly, our dry wipes offer a great way to mix your own cleaning or disinfecting solution while saving you up to 75% compared to actually buying wet wipes. One case contains 6 rolls for a total of 7,200 sheets of wipes. And I do just want to say that I have left my contact info in the chat box. And now when you click that link, it does not reflect the discount pricing, but please contact me directly either at hello@thekindlyco or at the email and phone number I left in the chat. And I will be happy to help you and answer any questions I can. And that is all for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. And we appreciate you sponsoring and supporting the National Association of Church Facility Managers.
So grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're going to get started on a roundtable, and Chris Barron, our education, Vice President of Education, is going to facilitate the meeting today. So take it away, Chris.
Oh my, you've put me on the spot here. I've got to find the questions again. They're here somewhere. All right. Gary, you've got those. If you've got those questions up, if you could get me started, or I'm going to post them on the screen if I can get to them. And or did she?
I have the questions. The first question, if you guys want to go ahead and get started, is I have a drinking fountains that have been turned off since last summer for COVID. I bought a bottle filling retrofit kit for one of them, and my question is, do I need to do anything other than flush the tank for a few minutes before I open it up to use?
All right, so somebody give us some feedback on what you guys have done regarding putting systems back in service after extended time.
We had a similar question on our forum a few days or weeks ago, and Hal Rose answered. Hal, what is your experience with those?
We haven't opened ours back up yet, but when we do, we're going to disconnect the water supply line and try to drain it, back drain it, and then flush it with some vinegar water sanitizing solution, and then rinse it out, and then start to use them.
All right, someone else regarding just bringing the water fountains back on service.
Well, when we turned ours back on, about half of them didn't work for various reasons after being shut down for a year. Imagine that. We just let them run for several minutes, just getting fresh water to flush through. We did not take the supply lines apart, and some of them we're still working on. Haven't got them to work yet.
I think the key to most plumbing systems, and I see John's got his hand up. Go ahead, John.
I was wondering about water fountains. We were discussing this week, and we're just looking at possibly getting rid of all the water fountain and just putting disposable cups there and just bottle refill. I was just really wondering today what you're all doing. Are you all thinking about bringing back the water fountains, or?
Let me add, just in a broader context, that any fluid systems that ever get open that are used for drinking water, if they ever get open for any reason, you guys need to do proper flushing. And the way that's typically done in residential is you get some Clorox in that water or some other component that will disinfect, and then you let that set for quite a long time, because when plumbing systems are repaired or open to the atmosphere for any reason, the chance of contamination in that drinking water can spread rapidly. But if you're on a city water system, you should be receiving an update from the city water system on what samples they're taking routinely. So if you're flushing your system somewhat, then you should be getting that water from the city or that system that does some chemical additions or purifies that water for you. And you're using that to sort of purify your system if you've not opened the system at all. And so flushing should be sufficient. Like with chlorine, for instance, as a common or things that they add to water, those chemicals do dissolve over time or dissipate over time. But in a closed system, they tend to stay pretty steady state for quite a while. So flushing a water fountain should be sufficient. To John's question, do you use water fountains in your facility for actual drinking instead of just a bottle filler? A lot of the COVID requirements are saying for bottle filling only, and they just post a sign behind it, say bottle filling only, instead of turning those systems off. And some of you, we've heard in the past, actually shut the water off to those systems so that no one could put their mouth down on that nozzle and push that button. And that seems a bit extreme when you could still use it for bottle filling. But even before COVID ever became a thing, water fountains were a common cross-contamination area in every facility, and you should have that disinfecting program in place to clean that spray head where kids may have put their mouth on that or spit or drooled or something in that area. Other thoughts about what John's question is of using that as a bottle filler only or posting signs?
Yeah, we switched to bottle fill a couple of years back. I think we had bottle fill feature going before even Ivan and I hosted the conference 5 or 6 years ago. And we've gradually added them to the other fountains throughout the facility. But I believe there's a requirement for having fountains in your facility. So just taking them out may not be the best solution if you want to remain code compliant. COVID has messed with a lot of these things. Hey, we're supposed to have them, but then we're not supposed to use them. So what we did, we took plastic cups, and I don't remember where I saw it, but they make a lock for for your drinking fountains for the drinking spout, and it's this red cap, and it's got a thing goes on. I don't know how they lock it on, whether it's got some kind of a zip tie or something, but it locks over the spout and still drains out. And it was like $40 per drinking fountain. And I decided to make our own. So we had plastic cups. We had a laminated sign main that said this part's not in use. And then we just took a whole bunch of silicone and glued it over the top, but left an outlet for the water to spew out in case anybody pushed the bar. And so
Wow.
this enabled us to let the water still flow through the bottle fill feature. We looked at how can we disconnect that underneath. It just seemed like a lot of hassle when we could still allow the water to flow, which means we don't have to go and like pump anything out. They've been functional for the entire time now. And we could still encourage people to fill their own bottle.
Yeah, I think Patrick hit the nail on the head about, I think it's a Department of Labor requirement. I mean, even in union areas, the unions require you provide water to employees. That's a Department of Labor or an OSHA requirement that you must provide hydration to employees. And so that's why architects design water fountains into buildings at so many per user. So to just discontinue those because of some COVID requirement is to violate other laws, as Patrick said. So we need to consider that. And the options that you put as alternatives to those water fountains lead to the same problems that cross-contamination of the water fountain causes. So you've got to really balance that approach. Let's say you put a stack of water bottles there. Who touches that? Who's contaminated the water bottles? Are those clean? There's just a lot of other concerns. Any other thoughts?
Hey, John, we did actually add a stainless steel holder to the side of one of our bottle fill things in our church atrium, so that people come in for the weekend services who are not typically used to bringing their own water bottle could actually get a disposable cup and fill and get a cup of water. So that was our one. We really don't want to keep restocking that either, but we have a school here and kids will just keep pulling it off. So we actually made it removable so it's not there during the week.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts about a drinking fountain? Know that your drains on your drinking fountain are a P-trap, and those will dry out just like a standard P-trap. And so if there's not another P-trap in line somewhere, you'll need to fill those drains if those water fountains are not being used, just like you would a standard drain that doesn't have a drain filler built in. All right, let's move on to the next question if there's nobody else. All right, so the next question I have on the spreadsheet from Scott Hammond, it says, what is the most significant thing that your ministry has adopted in the past 13 months, or a way that you've changed doing business in the last 13 months? I've got lots of them, but I don't want to be the only one talking. You guys got to speak up. All right, who has adopted a live stream worship service and you never had it before? Okay, got live stream going, really weren't doing it before. All right, how about people using their church telephone at home? All right, so we just deployed IP telephones. You can take that phone home with you, although the 911 is wrong, and you can use that phone at home just like you're at church. Your caller ID works just like you're at church. Take your phone home with you. That's something we changed. How about meetings? You've done meetings differently. You're going to keep doing Zoom meetings in the future.
Yes. The one thing we have changed is we were doing some Zoom meetings, but we're going to continue doing a combination of Zoom and in person for Sunday school classes. While we were out for the pandemic and closed, we had everything on Zoom. But we're going to continue doing a combination of in-person and Zoom for both worship services and for Sunday schools and committee meetings.
All right, so you've put together, as a facilities manager or helped the IT department or the AV team, put together some Zoom TV carts. Who's done Zoom TV carts? And you got them for faith groups, Sunday school classes, D groups, small groups, life groups, family groups. All right, there's John Owens got his hand up. You know, he's an ingenious.
All of ours are hardwired. We don't have them on carts. Every room's got a computer, a camera, and a screen now.
All right, so good. If you were able to join our CP, and I don't see any CP candidates, we took 3 PCs with us to Chicago, and we set one up on one of Frank's TV carts. We put a camera on the top of his TV, and we popped a wireless network adapter into that little PC and put a wireless keyboard on it. And instantly we have a Zoom session in the classroom. And I have built 5 of those on TV carts. that I can roll from classroom to classroom. And to Gary Robinson's point, where we have an issue with connectivity, we hardwire the network cable. So we'll run a long network cable to some of those if we really have any issues, but the TV cart can go from room to room, be used for Zoom in different sized venues. And then I've made a generic password for those where pastors and staff can log into that and start the Zoom session. So right now on our Sunday mornings here, we are up to 4 worship services with a Saturday night. And so we have 5 faith groups at any one time doing Zoom while in their classroom. So they'll do a hybrid. And so those carts are deployed throughout the building based on which faith groups use Zoom, which ones just do face-to-face.
Yeah, one of the things that I know some of you have done, but I don't know about some of you on this call. How many of you have built a studio to accommodate the increased level of video production that's going on in your church? We have a temporary one in a conference room that's been totally redesigned. And now we've actually reached out to our architect to figure out where we can actually put a permanent studio, because we actually have more people attending via video stream now than ever. And it surpasses the numbers that are even coming into church. And we're not displeased with the number of people that are actually coming on site. So we've realized that our ministry has expanded into that video realm. And we want to actually make sure that that's as high quality as what's going on inside the walls of the church.
All right, here's an example of what I've done, a little teeny miniature PC. And this one comes with an antenna and it has its own network adapter built in. We put a little wireless USB on there for the keyboard, and we're hooking that to an HDMI port television. So little mini PC, move it to any television. It doesn't have to be a real fancy one. I wouldn't say 286 processor, but at least a 486 to run Zoom. So thoughts there. So on this same topic that Scott asked about, what about seating in your worship center? Do you think that's a major change for you guys in the last 13 months?
We took out half our seating.
And was that fixed
portable
seating?
anyway.
Was that fixed seating?
It was attachable worship center chairs that make like pews, but we just didn't want it to be. First, we started with randomizing them in small numbers, larger numbers, depending on the group size coming in and family size. And then for with Easter, we decided to have a normal worship setup, and then just ask and encourage people to separate as necessary within their groups, or say, hey, just we know you want to get together, but it just felt better to everybody to have it in a normal setup. So we call it first class seating. There's 4 feet between the rows, so there's 6 feet from head to head. You can easily pass in those aisles. You got to get up to reach the pew card in front of you. And we've got chairs stacked along the sides of the auditorium. But it just feels better that way. Especially when you're putting your efforts into this video production and then it looks like you have an empty auditorium. That does not encourage people to come back.
Now we have pew chairs that do gang, and I built a couple of PVC sticks, and I marked on the sticks the 6 foot, the 5.5 foot, 5 foot, 4.5, and go across the top of the chairs. I tell the guys, well, we're going peak to peak this week. We're doing 4.5 feet peak to peak. And so we have been at 6 feet peak to peak, 5 feet, 5.5. We're down to 4.5 feet peak to peak on chairs. And every time I adjust the rows forward by about a half a foot, I can get another 50 chairs in the back of the room. And so right now, this 1,000-seat worship center has 450 seats in it. Well, people came in this Sunday for the last service, which is 11 o'clock, and it felt like it was just packed. I'm like, man, that place was packed. We only had 300 in there, 300 sitting in seats of 450, and they think, well, I can't find a place to sit because everyone's leaving a seat or two between them. So as that starts to happen, when we get to 320, 350, we immediately shift chairs forward another 6 inches. Boom, we can fit another 50 to 100 people in there. So you might be adopting as a part of this model of how do you make your worship center feel full and have that sort of that koinonia. So that might be a pro that answers Scott's question. I'll add another one. We started trying to do the directional flow. People come in one door, leave out a different door. Well, the 2 front side doors of our worship center have just been exit only for the last 20 years. And with COVID, we've now started making those, we just prop them open and it really feels like, hey, the venue's over and people go straight out to the parking lot. It's a shorter run to the parking lot. A lot of people like it. And we just had never done that before. And so for me as a facilities manager, now I've got to deal with those exits and make them look pretty and nice and make sure they're clean. And so one of the little mats I had outside the door was still covered in moss because no one ever goes that way. It was like a fire exit only. And so now I've got to go think about how does that door operate? Is it smooth? Does it feel comfortable for people when they walk out and leave? So another change to Scott's question.
And can I jump in here a second?
Yes, please.
Ken Minus here. I'm from Grand Rapids. We have a 2,000 seat auditorium. We've been roping off every other row because we have fixed seating. Our elders are actually praying tomorrow night again, and we may be opening all the rows, mask on, with all rows open, possibly with just a couple of seats in between family units. So we're moving forward. We've really never stopped meeting, never shut down drinking fountains. We just clean and sanitize. We have had no transmissions or super spreaders or anything. But the one thing that we have changed that I don't know if we'll ever go back to is our offering. We used to pass the offering plate, and on the fly, we've created Dropbox safes in the back. And I really don't know if we're ever going to go back to passing a collection plate again. So
that's a good one. And hopefully, Scott, that answers your question for sure, is that in my role, I'm involved more with things like first impressions, our security team. And so that change in our offering is a big deal. And so we do offer that. We continue to include the text to give option. We've had most of our faithful givers switch to the online giving. So there's been times where there's nothing in the baskets, and even to the degree that people are walking to the lobby to use our drop box in the lobby instead of the baskets in the back of the room. And so there is a big change there. I want to add to Scott's question is that one of our lead pastors said, what can you adopt that is pro, that's a positive, that is the right thing? And what can we shed off that we'll never do again because it really wasn't the best? This is better. And I think that's where the question lies for facilities managers. How can we take what happened and make it better and use it because it was a positive? Any other thoughts?
One of the things we've given up is the donut wall. Did anybody else ever have the donut wall where you've got a wall with pegs on it and there's about 3 or 4 donuts on every peg? As you walk in, you grab your coffee and you head to the sanctuary.
No one does.
Well,
Who does that? Gary.
I do not miss the donut wall.
I've never heard of
We looked
that.
at doing a donut wall, and
I don't know where our pastors saw it somewhere. And after we did the big remodel, when we opened back up with these donut walls on wheels. We roll them in the atrium. It was the craziest thing, kids up there playing with them, worse than sneezing on them. There's no sneeze guard. So I was happy to see those go away.
Okay, I agree with that one. All right, well, let's move on to the next question if no one else has any input on that one. So I have on my spreadsheet here, latest issues with reopening, mask, social distancing, and cleaning protocols. And I know that question comes from Stephanie. I know it's been a common thread throughout these roundtables that we've done, problems associated with this. And I will just kick us off by saying the key problem for Faith Baptist is the difference of opinion, the judging people, the judging each other, and the difference of opinion about sanitation, safety, cleanliness. And for instance, we have committed that our 8 o'clock service would be mask only, and we've encouraged everyone to have masks. But one of the weaknesses is that we have back-to-back services that overlap by they don't overlap at all, but there's a 15 to 30 minute window between them. And we have people coming early to the next service who are not going to honor that mask only model. And so one of our pastors is walking through the lobby asking people to put a mask on who have come early as a greeter or some servant to serve in that next ministry, and just gotten livid. Like, seriously, I'm not putting a mask on. So that management of volunteers and the difference of opinion, and I think it points to where we stand spiritually a lot of times too on biblical issues. And how do you manage that tension? So that was something that I would add in that question there. Other thoughts?
Chris, we've been fairly lax in Florida, but in our area we have opened few seatings. We've never really we've ripped them off for the first week or two, but then we finally decided that we would just put signs up saying, you know, mask encouraged. Did that for a while. We had a roped off section that we would say that mask only in both services. And little by little, we've dwindled it down to about 4 or 5 rows. But our biggest thing is when we started telling the volunteers and the people teaching, we were having troubles getting enough teachers, and we finally determined that, you know, we had very few people wearing masks, that we would just say, all right, you know, if you want to wear a mask, wear it. If not, then, and before we were telling every teacher they had to have it in the preschool and the children's department. When we took that off, we gained in attendance and volunteers, nearly 25% people came back right away. They said, you know, they're not going to be there if they had to wear it, but if they don't have to, they'll come back.
So Stephanie, what are you considering that you think that maybe someone here in this group might be able to help you consider?
Well, we're right now in Virginia. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, at Third Church. We have a state mandate, 6 feet social distancing and mask inside any gathering of any kind. But we're transitioning possibly in June to not having that be as strict. But I'm trying to figure out, you know, where we are and where y'all have gone before me as far as transitioning from these incredibly tight restrictions to opening up, when, especially when you have a hybrid of children that aren't vaccinated, people that aren't vaccinated, you know, and you have that vaccinated camp and the unvaccinated.
You know, let me approach this a little bit, Stephanie. We are really, I'm in Washington State, so things are very tight here still. I still have my mask handy. We're, you know, you can eat in a restaurant, but there's a lot of regulations. You got to wear it in, take it off. Some of that seems silly. I don't know. My daughter and her husband, he's a microbiologist, works in a lab that does testing for COVID. So when we're with them and we're all vaccinated, I still got to wear a mask, sometimes a double mask. They got to see me put hand sanitizer on before I can even hold my granddaughter. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That said, I had a great conversation with Elson last week. While I was on vacation, we chatted a little bit, and he had some questions about what are we going to do at the conference, because we're coming from all kinds of places. I just came from a vacation that went through 13 states, none of which seemed to have a mask mandate. I was eating in restaurants and I was seeing people, and there didn't seem to be any social distancing. And when I got home, the first place I went was I got a COVID test from our health office here at the church, because there were those people who were like, hey, we don't want you around if you've been exposed. So how are we going to do that? Because we're asking people to take that risk to come to Chicago, to a place that's probably a little bit more locked down than where some of y'all are living, especially if you're coming from Texas or Florida. So one of the things that I saw that I liked, and I mentioned this to Elson, that I don't know, unless there's a mask mandate, I don't think we're going to be mandating everybody wear a mask. But I think we're going to say, if you're comfortable with that, please do so, and we'll accommodate that in a way. We'll accommodate some social distancing. We'll do the things that make people feel comfortable coming together. But the single best idea I found is these wristbands that come in red, yellow, and green. And the idea being that when you register or when you come in and we check you into the conference, you pick your wristband. Green is, I'm ready to get a hug or a handshake or a high five, and to be maskless. Yellow would be, hey, I'm not quite ready for that. Stay back a little bit. You might be comfortable with no mask, but I don't want the close contact. And the red would be, hey, you know what? I still want to wear my mask, and I'm gonna, maybe I'll touch elbows, but just don't do that. And so there's none of that having to ask people, are you comfortable with this, or getting into an uncomfortable situation. You can just see it by the wristband. And I think it's a great idea. And I think churches are probably going to having to do something like this. As we get into that, it's the hot and the cold water meshing together again and trying to find the right temperature. It just, right now, what we've got is people that are fully comfortable coming back to the church. And we got a whole bunch of people watching online that have anxiety about coming back. And how do we welcome them back in without making them feel like they're taking an even greater risk? And it's the same as going to be at the conference.
Good. Stephanie, some other things. So I got Randy's hand up.
Yeah, can I go ahead? Yeah, so yeah, we're out here in Virginia too, Stephanie. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. And we've always from the get-go have made the governor's ordinance the bad guy. So we never really took a stance. We always said whatever he says, we're going to play within those rules as much as we possibly can. Obviously, there's some exemptions to that, but we've had highly encouraged masks the entire time. We're not policing. We don't police masks. We're not going to kick you out if you don't wear a mask, but we offer and supply masks, those disposable ones, those one and dones. We have them all there. We just 2 weeks ago stopped registration. So we've opened it up to if you feel comfortable, and that's increased our, we went to 2 services, and that's increased our congregation pretty substantially because people just didn't want to go through the hassle of registering. So yeah, so we've always, I think I heard it here a couple months ago, was to make the whatever state governor's orders, his mandates, the bad guy. And that kind of takes you and the politics of it out. And you can, say, well, this is the guy we voted for. So
I think one of the hardest parts is that in leadership, when you're in a leadership role at your campuses and facilities, that you do need to honor that and respect that. And as long as it's not in direct violation of God's word, you're going to respect the leaders that God has put on those seats in government. So definitely want to do that. To Randy's point, we did RSVPs for a long time. And then what we have recently done is we still take attendance at the door, but we quit doing RSVPs. And the attendance at the door gives some people the comfort that if there was an obvious exposure or outbreak or knowledge of that, we can do some contact tracing. And so there are still a few who are like, I don't want to have to check in, but our welcome ministry tends to know them and say, I got you already. And so then it's not so much a checking in as we're just trying to take attendance. We're already counting people.
Now, what happens, like we had Shelby went down on us on Friday, and we ended up with more people registering than we had seats. And it was a big mess. But what do you end up with social distancing if you don't have registration?
Yeah, good question. And what we did early on was we had the seats greater than 6 foot apart, and that whole plan, try to plan that out. Families can sit together. But then the RSVPs, you stopped it. You said all the seats are gone. And with RSVPs, you stop that registration. What we found after 3 months of that is that people started RSVPing but didn't come. And so we'd have only 60% of the RSVPs show up. And then our pastors are saying, well, make these other people stand to the side and make sure there's no seats left because these others RSVP. I said, no, we're not holding people. You didn't RSVP, so you can't go in. So some of that is you managing, if you have control over the seat count, that whole model. And so, but the RSVP help let people know you've gotten locked out. You missed the opportunity, and maybe you open another service up to keep people coming in. Other thoughts that might answer Stephanie's concerns. I know I was going to say early on, Stephanie, and Randy, I see your hand up. Stephanie, if you're at the front end of this thing where some of us have already gone before, I painted squares on the front patio for every 6 foot. I got stickers on the lobby floor every 6 foot. We've got the hand sanitizer all over the place. We've got the mask in the lobby. We've got signage that says don't hug anybody. I mean, the list is out enormous and it's slowly going away, but we did a lot of money and time up front. So Randy?
Yeah, one of the things we offered at the door were these card stocks that we designed and created that say leaving a space or social distancing. And the idea was that if you felt uncomfortable sitting next to somebody directly, which is fair, you can grab one of these cards, you can grab 2 of these card stocks and you can put them on the chairs next to you. And that way people can see. And typically people would already do that with your Bible, your jacket, your purse, whatever. But we would offer stuff like that. And obviously we trust people that if they feel uncomfortable, to make arrangements. We had the balcony space. We have a balcony that holds about 50 people, and we would leave that pretty open and encourage people that weren't worried about social distancing to the main congregation. And then people that were, we would offer the balcony as somewhere where they could spread out a little bit more. But we did have 6-foot rows, and now they're down to about 4 foot. So it's comfortable, but more and more people are coming. And so, you can get a vaccine for free anywhere. So if you feel really, really uncomfortable, we've been telling people, we're not trying to make it political, but go get the vaccine.
Stephanie, does that help answer your question? I hope.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on helping Stephanie think through her transitions? All right, next question on my board says, what type of things are churches doing to help the community, such as outreach? What things are churches doing to help the community? Now, I don't think this question is COVID specific. So think about outreach opportunities and ministries at your campus, your building. What are you guys doing differently that maybe impacts the facilities management team in the area of outreach? Joe?
Well, we partnered with one of the school districts for food distribution to those that are food insecure. So we're partnered with the local school district to provide 175 or so bags of groceries and produce and bread and eggs and cereal and et cetera, and we distribute that every 2 weeks to the school for parents that are food insecure to pick up a bag of groceries that'll last them about 2 weeks. So there's another church that drops off food, and the school district does food drives, and then we do a food drive here at the church too. So we constantly have bins that people can donate food, and then we take a day and pack that up, and then we have volunteers come in and do all that, and then we transport that to the school so it can get distributed.
Very good. Other thoughts about engaging your community? All
Hey,
right,
Chris.
I think Mark Brown said something here.
Yep. Hey guys, I'm Mark Brown, Transformation Church in South Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. We kind of started here at Transformation similar to what Joe was saying. It started as a kind of a COVID relief outreach thing as part of our outreach ministry. But because the need was so great, we realized it's great beyond COVID. And so it became part of our kind of our heartbeat of our outreach, to where we were partnering with schools, and we still do partner with the schools to find the needs. But we actually do all the distribution through our church and through our facilities. And so we're actually now looking at, either purchasing or going in and leasing around, 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of space to house what we're doing. And so you talked earlier about positive things that have come out of this. And I mean, this is a huge positive. We found a need that was there that we were kind of tapping into, but, thinking it was COVID, and then stepping back and saying, this isn't just a COVID need, this is a community need. And so we've been intentional to go into other areas of like Charlotte, not just right inside of, our footprint, but taking it beyond and finding other schools and ministries that kind of need help. So that's what we're doing. So we right now, because we're not doing kids, our kids wing has become our store. And that's going to have to change, obviously, because we do have plans to start, to relaunch kids. So we're in that process right now of looking at space. Like, this isn't going away. And so, but a lot of it is facilitated through the building right now. And we do it every other week, like Joe, and cars will wrap around our parking lot, lining up to get their food bags. So it's been really cool to see too.
David, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want Dave to tell you what he's doing at one of his campuses there where he works, where there's this debate, I guess, among pastors sometimes in, do the resources that members bring, how is that resource used? And Dave's got a model that I was just really impressed by. Dave, if you want to give us an example of that community church where the building has that community focus.
Sure, Chris, I'd be happy to. Dave Meek at Community Christian Church in Plainfield, Illinois. When we built our facility, it was built as a community center, a place for the community to come in, and it happens to house Community Christian Church. And half of our facility, we're a little under 100,000 square feet, half of that is basketball courts and volleyball courts. And so we intentionally, as soon as we were allowed, because I'm in Illinois, we're pretty restricted here still. Things are opening up. But long before the church started opening back up, we were up and operating our sports facility as quickly as we possibly could. Last summer, we started letting them in for one-on-one practices and things like that. Anything we could do to reach out to the families that were desperate to have something for their children to do. And we were up and running on the church side, on the sportsplex side, and people in the church were a little upset at first. How come I can't come in and use the facility? How come we aren't doing stuff on the church side? Now, initially, the whole concept of the sportsplex and what we call the event center was for the church to generate revenue to support their ministry. It wasn't to create a profit so much as to generate revenue, but also have something for the community. While we were operating a break even. We weren't even attempting to make a profit when we reopened last fall. We worked with all of our programs because we don't run a single sports program. We rent out our space, we share our space. There, I use that term you're not supposed to use in our world. We share our space with bona fide programs that come in and contract to use the space for the entire year. So it is a revenue generator. They were struggling to survive. We were fortunate enough that as church, we had the church backing us, but we negotiated and adjusted our contract prices for them, anything to get their programs going in the evenings and on weekends, and just had to share with the church the purpose of this facility, because it's a beautiful 4-court hardwood court facility where you build something like that and members of the congregation, or in our world we call them attenders, they want to pop in and use the space. Okay, I'm paying for this space. Why can't I just come and use this space? Well, this space was built for a dedicated purpose to reach out to the community and generate revenue. And no, you can't just show up on a Saturday and use a basketball court. And I'm in a unique position. I actually work for an architectural firm that helped them design it, and they planted me there to run it for the church because the church had no idea how to do this. And quite frankly, they didn't want to be the bad guy. And I get it. So I'm the guy that gets to be the bad guy, whether it's the sportsplex side of the facility, or I also control who gets to use our auditorium or our dance studios or our meeting rooms. I get to be the yay or nay, which the pastors love, because then they don't have to be the bad guy. Oh, you go talk to Dave and he'll let you know what the contract says and all that stuff. But it's been a blessing to the community to be able to offer something for them, for their kids, for the youth, because we didn't go back to school till about a month ago. We were still in full remote here. So it's been interesting and it's been challenging. The last conversation about how do you deal with people who want to wear masks or don't want to wear masks, we had to navigate all of that and let people know that if they're coming into our facility, it's not the government that's telling you to wear a mask. We're doing it to our line was, we're doing it to protect the program for the youth of the community. And if you want the youth in the community to have something to do, you'll honor our request and you'll wear a mask. And we had very little pushback. And so now, we're navigating. Churches now open on the other side where they just increased their footprint because we went from 6 feet to 3 feet of space. We're still doing reservations for people to come in and all that good stuff. But the key thing was being that community center where people from the community had a place to go. And just one other thing that we did as a component, we have more frequent blood drives. We partner with the local blood bank and we use our facility for them to be able to come in practically once a month now, whereas before it was once a quarter, because there is a huge need for blood and there's nowhere for people to go to spread out like you can in our facility during the day when you can shoot a cannon and nobody hears it. It's the evenings and the weekends that were packed. So it's like, okay, find a daytime use for something like that, that again, reaches out to the community. And what I love the most in our facility, when you come into the sports side, you don't realize it's a church. We're an old factory. We don't look like a church. But you walk inside and on the wall says, helping people find their way back to God.
Ah, praise the Lord.
Oh, this is a church? Yes, let me tell you about it. And we have 10 of them in the Chicagoland area, and come on and well, you're always welcome. So it has been an entryway to reach out to the community to provide a service and tweak a few people that maybe they need to look back at getting back with God.
Amen. That's good. So the question was, how does your campus, your building, your facilities reach the community? And I know that's a debate among pastoral staff sometimes, is the purpose of that building. But as facilities managers, we should submit to the local leadership of our churches as well. I'm not telling you to buck the system, but to think about community in doing that. And so who has Red Cross or blood drives in their campuses? Yeah. How about letting an election polling site, voting? All right. How about homeschool graduation ceremony? Homeschool groups. Uh-huh. Yeah, see, my hand has not come down yet. You guys. What else? We do food pantry here. Food pantries. Yeah. We used to do clothing things where you distribute clothing. My dad used to call those rag shakings. And we used to do the clothing ministry.
Yeah, we have a thrift store too.
Randy?
Yeah, just on the idea of community, one of the biggest things that whenever COVID hit initially was the city kind of dropped the ball on what they were allowing for the homeless community. And so, they cut everything in half. They stopped food distribution. And one of our congregation members who was heavily involved saw that, the homeless community here in Norfolk, Virginia, didn't have anything. It was cold. It was getting into the wintertime. And so he started making lunches here at our facility. We have a full kitchen. And it started with 25 bag lunches. And long story short, he now has about 90 lunches a day that he produces out of our facility. And he started doing a thing that he calls pop-up church. So on Sunday morning, before we are even here, he's here and he's cooking breakfast with a group. We now have about 8 churches involved. And they go to where the homeless community is in the mornings. They go to parking lots and they'll have breakfast, hot breakfast, ready to go. Obviously, they have servers and they're doing everything COVID friendly. And then they'll have a quick sermon. They'll have somebody come out there and preach each week, go out there and share the gospel with people. We've seen people come to faith, get baptized. And, it's all because of what happened with the city dropping the ball. But then obviously a guy whose heart was for the homeless community, seeing the need and saying to us, he was a congregational member, and he was like, hey, how can we do something about this? And now he has this model of a pop-up church that he's multiplied into different areas of the city. So now we have like 3 or 4 of them that happen each Sunday. So yeah, there's some incredible things when people see a need and then approach the church and you can put your your back to it. And then obviously on the funding side of it, we have our general offering. We always, probably about every other week, we do a thing. It's called CR. Our church's name is Crossroads, so CRC, but we do CR Cares. It's an extra offering, and that money, is going to the community. So whenever you give to it, you can bet that we're going to use it to do the homeless ministry. We're going to do it to the numerous other ministries. So that's how we take care of that.
Outstanding. All right. Any other thoughts about community? I'm going to move on to the next question, kind of keep us on track here. All right, MERV 8 versus MERV 13. How significant is the increased load on HVAC equipment to change your air filters from a MERV 8 to MERV 13? Maybe your motors, your drives, belts, differential pressure across those filters. Any thoughts or concerns? I know I've already heard in HVAC discussions, nah, it's not a big deal. Nah, not really a big deal. That's not how I think. I've got an engineering background. It's a bigger deal. MERV 8 to MERV 13. Who's done this, and what do you think, or what knowledge have you gained in working through that?
Hey, Chris,
Okay.
we went through this back last fall in trying to figure out how to reopen our school. And it was suggested, hey, put better filters in. And my HVAC contractor said, no way. It's just going to cost us more in the end with equipment repairs and breakdown. And their suggestion was to make some changes to the controls, so that gave us what they called a enhanced ventilation mode. I call it COVID button. All I got to do is hit a button, and it reprograms all my rooftop units to an increased level of outside air. And so it resets the minimums from where here we can, our climate allows us to get free cooling a lot of the time. But now our minimum, we started at 40% minimum outside air. And we haven't had any cross transmission all school year. We did back it down to 30%. 40 just seemed awful high, especially through the winter. But everything I've read says that the important thing is getting the fresh circulation of air. So we do that throughout the day. And then every night in the middle of the night, while the units are not in run mode, they each turn on and run for an hour at 100% fresh air dump. So that by the time they come in the morning, it's been clean air. And then we do follow the disinfecting protocols every evening with the spray guns, and we get all the touch surfaces. And I mean, the science changes daily, but now they say, oh, you're not going to get it from touch surfaces, you're going to get it from aerosols. Well, your mask isn't stopping aerosols. And now 6 feet isn't okay, but 3 feet is okay in the school, but not in other situations. None of it makes sense to us. So I think the number one thing we did was opening up that fresh air and getting the kids outside and getting people outside. When we take meetings outside now, we sit distance and we take our masks off, and we get to see each other's faces. And I think we're doing good with that. But there are other ways about this. There's a lot of companies that are asking about putting in the ionization units. I don't know, that could be a long-term thing. We actually are applying for a grant that will help us pay for all the things we did during COVID. I'm not sure if it's through the local school, the state schools department, or but the amount of grant that the minimum we had to apply for was based on like the free lunch program in our local school district. So some weird balance there. But the minimum, we had to apply for $750,000 in stuff, which we were throwing stuff all over. And certain things they would cover. Like they would not cover the upgrade to my HVAC system to the controls, because that was considered a capital expenditure. But they would cover individual air purifiers for every classroom. And most people are thinking, we're just going to Amazon, we're going to order some air purifiers, and they're not going to sanitize a 950 square foot classroom, let alone a 100 square foot bedroom. So I did a little research, and we found some that'll do 2,000 square feet. Yeah. And I don't know, $1,100, $1,200 a piece. Yeah. And we threw it into the budget. Now, if it gets cleared, we'll probably buy one for every classroom, just as an ongoing effort to easing people's anxiety. But the reality is, we've gone all school year. You get the odd case, somebody comes in, we don't know where they got it. If they have any of the symptoms, they go home, they quarantine, the class gets quarantined for a week. We do the same for all staff. But we haven't had any cross transmission in our facility during this whole last year. So my recommendation, get fresh air in your building if you can at all do it. I know if you're in the South, that's a little bit harder.
All right, let's do a little science here, and you guys prove me wrong. Someone tell me I'm out to lunch. If I put a MERV 8 filter in my AC unit and I leave it in there for 2 years, ain't it now a MERV 13? All right, so if I buy a MERV 13 now, don't I just have to change it more often to keep the differential pressure down? So at GlaxoSmithKline, when we worked in those areas, we had an aseptic suite where we make drugs. And we use magnehelic gauges that check differential pressure across doorways even, and HEPA filters. And we changed, as Johnson Controls, we changed the HEPA filters in the aseptic suites. We put a magnehelic gauge across those filters. And once the magnehelic gauge showed a differential pressure of such and such, we changed the filter. So a filter gets clogged and it increases its efficiency. It blocks more airflow. So to switch from MERV 8 to MERV 13, any guy can tell you right away, yeah, there's a very slight differential pressure change. That's not when the problem occurs. It's 3 months later is when the problem occurs. And the filter is clogged because it was MERV 13 and just clogged faster. So some other suggestions here, if you really want to move to a higher efficiency filter, is that many of the HVAC systems, they have the capability of widening the width of the filter slot. Okay, so the larger the units, they'll have these, the filter slot can be adjustable. So you could do a 2-inch, a 4-inch, a 3-inch, and you could slide a bigger filter in there. And so if you get a pleated filter, you can get a MERV 13 with more surface area than a MERV 8 based on the size of the filter, if it's been pleated more and it's wider. So if you're moving in this direction, and to answer this question in our questionnaire coming through this thing is to consider the bigger picture of what you're trying to do. And to Patrick Hart's concern, his point is, if what you're trying to do is a COVID related thing, the filter may not be the solution. Fresh air might be the solution. But MERV 13 does do something different than MERV 8. It is more efficient. It's going to collect more dust. If you put the ionizer in your system, the science says ionization helps smaller particles clump together and get caught by your filter. So an ionizer should help precipitate things out of the air by giving them a charge, and they'll clump together, or they'll follow the air, or they'll be collected by the filter or by an electrostatic precipitator. So any other thoughts? Someone tell me I'm wrong. No, you know you want to. Come on. All right. Any other thoughts on filtration for HVAC systems? All right, let's move on to our last question that I have on my spreadsheet is, does anyone have underground retention under their parking lot, pro or con? All right, so Joe's got his hand up.
Well, yeah, we have a pretty large parking lot. It's about the size of a football field. And that has pervious paving on it, and it drains through the paving into a significant infiltration facility, is what we would call it. That it works fine. Pervious paving, I don't know how long does it take before the pervious paving starts to clog, but it's a requirement that the civil engineering and the township requires us to do here, based on stormwater management. So the pervious paving is not as substantial, I would say, as regular paving. We've had it for 3 years now, and it's holding up okay. It's our overflow lot, so it doesn't get a ton of use. I'll be interested to see how it does over a long-term period, but we haven't had any problems with it, put it that way. It does tend to be a little softer in the hot summer months, and we're in Pennsylvania, so If you sit in one spot and turn your steering wheel, you can tear it up pretty easily in the during high temperature. I mean, I think they're going away from pervious paving now as far as blacktop's concerned, and moving to more geotype products that are maybe concrete blocks with open cells. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. We have some pervious paving stones that have a large gap between them that we've used at the front entrance to prevent puddling as well. So that's just my input.
All right, let me add to what Joe's saying. I think the question is also includes, and that's a really good example of what Joe's done on his campus. The question also includes having a tank hidden underneath your parking lot. So any kind of tank, it doesn't have to be a gravel bed of some sort, but it could just be a tank. And so you've got to start considering, do you ever remove the lid of that tank? And if so, do you have to cut the pavement to get to that lid? Or is the lid built into the paving or the parking like it's a concrete lid? Or is there manhole covers in your parking lot that storm drains run into a tank hidden underneath the parking lot as stormwater retention? And so if you're not familiar with what Joe's talking about, especially in large municipalities where there's a lot of flat surfaces, roofs, and parking lots, the Army Corps of Engineers has to manage the amount of water that might hit the ground at any given amount of time. And the faster water hits the ground and does runoff, you have to manage that so you don't get instantaneous flash floods. And so you slow that water down with retention ponds. And those retention ponds, a lot of times you'll see, are just right beside a large parking lot, like at a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Sam's Club. They have to build a retention pond big enough to handle instantaneous runoff from the amount of impervious surface that they've created with the roof of that building and the parking lot. And so would you put those underneath the parking space so that you could then prove to the law people who have given us this law that I still have this area, this catch basin, this area to receive this excess water hidden underneath my parking lot? And what are the pros and cons to doing that?
Is anybody using that tank for rainwater harvesting to irrigate?
So another question here is if I can leverage the use of that space for other purposes, such as rainwater harvesting. And that comes with a whole nother set of pros and cons that Gary's bringing up. So like even at your own home, if you were to try to capture some down gutter water, then how do you manage that? And those tanks have to be managed, meaning they will grow stuff, they'll get full of sediment, they have to be cleaned out routinely. But a proper retention pond, Joe is referring to more of an impervious or a pervious surface that allows water to filtrate down, but a retention tank of some sort has to be cleaned out routinely. So the answer to this question is you're going to need a maintenance plan to get access to those retention areas and ensure that they are empty when there should be no water in them, and that they're ready to hold the water that the impervious surface is going to shed quickly during a large flood event. And so they have to be inspected. And if it's just a retention pond even, it must be cleaned out routinely. Maybe every 10 years, you might have to go in there with an excavator if you still require that retention pond. If it wasn't just a temporary one built during construction, if it is a long-term pond that's required to be there for impervious surface requirements in your town. The other thing that might happen is, let's say you need to build parking lot, you only own 10 acres and 8 acres of that is impervious surface, roof and parking lot, and your town says you can only get to 60% impervious. Then you have to mitigate somehow. And a tank underneath your parking lot might be your mitigation, or buying another piece of land somewhere and promising not to build on it. So these are the things you'll have to do as a facilities manager, possibly, or involved in construction, to confirm you've met those impervious surface limits. Other concerns or thoughts on this topic about tanks, underground tanks, retention, water runoff, stormwater runoff? This leads to a discussion possibly of wetlands. And so when some of these areas are near wetlands, you have to slow down or stop any debris that might be coming across your parking lot or be shed from your campus. And if your campus somehow contaminates a wetland, then you could seek some pretty big fines. And so a retention tank or retention pond or those things help protect you from being hit by the wetlands, or what here in North Carolina is called DENR, Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, coming and citing you, and they will cite you. If one of your silt fences falls during construction and mud flows over your silt fence, they will write a ticket on the spot. They don't come and fix your silt fence. They just write you a ticket because your silt fence is letting mud contaminate the nearby wetlands. All right, so I see Matt's got his hand up.
Does anybody in this group have any experience actually cleaning out or reshaping a retention pond? I reached out to our contractor who built ours now 9 years ago and asking him that very question about how to plan for that financially for a clean out. And he's been in the business for 40 years. And he said, nobody's ever asked that question before. He doesn't think anybody's ever done it. So I'm wondering if anybody here has actually done it, has been asked to do it by their by the managing body, the government that's watching them.
Yeah, Matt, the only clean out that I have to do, and I have 2 ponds on my property, we have to remove vegetation from around the edge that is not considered, or that's considered invasive or non-native. So I get alder trees grow like weeds. So about every other year, I've got to hire, either have my guys go out there with a chainsaw and haul out a bunch of stuff, or hire a landscaper to come in and do it. I think it has to do with what might get into the water, but it also gets kind of ugly too. And we don't do ponds that have the little fountains in them like they have down in Texas where they keep the water moving. Ours is just stagnant, and then it drains out into a creek on either side of our property. So there's always water coming and going, and there's some method that's catching any kind of sediment, because I've never had to go in there and like dredge it. And I think that's what Chris was referring to. I've been here 13 years. The original ponds were built 20 plus years ago, and it's never been a need.
Have you ever checked it as far as how much sediment you have?
Honestly, I have not. We did put a boat in there one time. One of our teachers decided to have a Bible study out there with his class. He made his own boat, kind of like the guy in NCIS. And he went out there and he was doing his thing. So, I mean, you can float a boat on it, and there's fish in it that show up every year. But yeah, never dropped anything in there to figure out what's there. I'm assuming most of it's floating out into the creek.
All right, so I see Joe's got his hand up.
Yeah, so we have a retention basin as well as this large infiltration facility, and that's all plumbed. Takes runoff from the parking lot, goes into the infiltration facility as well. Now, if anything spills out of that and other areas are directed towards the pre-basin and the main basin, and we've been through some construction, so we are starting to get some silt buildup in the retention basin, which is going to have to be removed at some point. We do a yearly inspection of the system, and same thing, maintain a cut around the top, and keep an eye on the vegetation growing around the sides. Make sure you don't have a groundhog digging a hole in the side of it, and clean out the trash screen. Make sure the trash screen is kept clean. But at some point, we're going to have to get a track hoe, substantial piece of equipment in there to scrape out some of that silt. The DEP has been through every so often. They just come out and do an inspection randomly. You never know when they're going to come. And the township, there's this report that we do every year. This inspection report goes to the township every year. That's their way of keeping an eye on it. I hope that helps.
It sounds like everybody's kind of watching them, but nobody's really had to go in and actually reshape them and pull out or dredge them at this point.
There's a design built into so many years of sediment. You should find those blueprints from the original utility contractor based on that information. It should have some measurements and sizing that you need to maintain. To Joe's point, you do want to clean out if there's a stormwater screen or something that needs to be kept clean. But there should be a height requirement or depth or wise or total cubic yards of how much water it can hold before it overflows. Back to, and I see your hand, Hal, back to Patrick's comment though, you do have to, if based on the kind of pond you have, you do have to clear out those plants that may be growing in the dam portion of that. Okay, so if it's got a damming type function, roots can undermine the quality of that. And so you have to put the correct grasses that prevent erosion, but that doesn't grow so deep that those trees grow in the roots, and then it actually prevents that clay base or whatever types in that wall of those dams from doing the work they need to do in a 100-year flood. So you've got to think of worst case scenarios like the 100-year flood, and it's going to have all that pressure on it. So there are organizations that do that. Here in my area, we have one called Keller Environmental. Keller Environmental can come make an assessment, and his crew will actually give you a quote on annual maintenance of that basin, like what Patrick's talking about, where he replaces some plants, he updates the grasses, he removes some plants. And for the clean out, he'll go in there with a bobcat or something and clean it out and plant new grasses and stuff to maintain it. So there are those groups. Hal, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, we had a capital reserve study done about a year and a half ago, and as part of that 25-year plan, they outlined having our retention ponds cleaned, and he gave me a couple of names of companies in our area that do that. So you might want to reach out to some engineering firms in your area, because they, obviously have them. Those companies come either create those retention ponds or redo them for people.
Very good. All right, so I saw Stephanie actually put a question in the chat room. If you guys are monitoring the chat, she's asking what our churches are doing about children since they're still not vaccinated. And I saw Kara had mentioned there. Feel free to use our chat during this session. Because the question is out there, is anybody else want to ring in on what you're doing different with children because of vaccination or unvaccinated? I'll ring in and just say, we're not asking people if they're vaccinated or not. That was not a question we even asked. That's none of our business, and it doesn't impact our choices with you. You could lie about it, and so it's not something that we're even asking. Any thoughts on children?
Yeah, Chris, we're actually modified our children's ministry, so we're only doing it during one service time, so we don't have to worry about getting in there and disinfecting in between. We're trying to enact social distancing. We're not doing it in all the venues that we did before. We're not expecting the same numbers of kids, and for the most part, those kids are pretty good about wearing masks. They're doing it. Those that have gone back to school, those that are in other settings are following through that. But then that's our state mandate. The interesting thing where you say, oh, you're not asking about vaccination. Our state is heading into a thing where our governor would prefer basically a vaccination passport that would allow you a specialized entrance to a church, specialized seating section for those who are vaccinated, specialized seating at sporting events for those who are vaccinated. And you still got to wear a mask. So I'm not quite sure I get the segregation aspect of this. It seems like a slippery slope. It seems like it infringes on things like HIPAA. But I don't know. We're in for some interesting times. I just pray for our country.
Well, Governor Cooper, North Carolina says, we're going to be good if we get to 66.6%. All right, Lee, did you have your hand up? Okay, so I got Randy's hand up.
Yeah, I was actually typing, but I'm a slow typer, so I'll just share it here. Our children's ministry has completely taken over the fellowship hall, so they are out of the children's classrooms and into a much larger space. They're still required to wear masks, but you got a 5-year-old. How much is that? We did do, I think what Patrick said, we had wristbands with different colors. And those wristbands, the parents could decide, my child can only sit with siblings, my child can sit with friends that the children's director knows, and my child can sit with anybody. So that's been, but it's also helped with our volunteer pool. Instead of having a teacher in every classroom, we've had, our volunteer pool's gone down. So we've gone to our fellowship hall, and we still don't have the fellowship hall for any other events other than kids. So they have completely taken it over. And that's on our children's director, and she does an incredible job making sure people are comfortable. And we are one service too, so we don't offer it for everything.
I sure appreciate all the great input and the dialogue and us getting to hear from other people, different states, all of us under some of these same requirements. I'm going to transition now back to our president and executive director, But before I do, I just want to say, as maybe we maybe pray together or ask for any other thoughts, I want to encourage you to sign up for our national conference. As Patrick already mentioned, we're moving forward with that. The marketing director said, I think we have over 60 some signed up already, and excited about being up there in Chicago for that. We are going to show you at the very end, after Gary dismisses us, a quick video from our sponsor today. So that'll be right at the end as we're wrapping up. So back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Chris. Did a great job of facilitating the meeting today. It is so good to be able to hear your voice and see your face, even if it is over a computer. It's not as good as being face to face, but it's the next best thing. Any closing comments from anybody? Anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention? Chris, do we just sign off and Sherry's going to play that video, or? Okay.
I've got the video here. So if there are no final comments or concerns and you're ready, if somebody wanted to pray for us, then I'll show the video at the end of that.
Yeah, I'll do that. But, I just would like to say, yeah, Sherry did mention yesterday that we have, I believe, 68 people registered for the conference right now, which is great, considering the post-COVID thing. So any of you on here that have not done that yet, I really encourage you to do so. I think it's going to be a great time. We'll figure out the whole COVID response thing. We're going to be having a planning committee meeting later this week, so we can kind of address some of those issues. And obviously things change every day, how those things play out, but we want to make sure that we make people comfortable to be there, but we also feel very strongly about meeting face to face, and are confident that God's going to bless that time together there, meeting face to face. So I'm really glad to see a lot of you guys that have already, and gals that have registered. I'm excited to be back there. Let me go ahead and close it with prayer, and then we'll have Chris set off the video. Lord, we just thank you for this time to discuss our ministry that you have put into our hands, to the facilities ministry that facilitates every other ministry within our individual congregations. And we just ask that we can take this information, this discussion, and we can take those things that are fruitful or pertinent to us and put them to use in our own ministries, that we'll be willing to share our own experiences with others as they approach us. We're not islands, Lord. We're here to help each other, and we just ask that we'll be open to sharing these things and carrying one another's burdens. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Blessings, everybody.
Yeah.